My talk is about some aspects of my path. I've struggled with commitment to my path, and these are some thoughts about how I've mostly remained committed without going crazy. From the time I was a little girl, I just saw a friend, until I left for college, my parents took me each and every Sunday to St. Stephen's Episcopal Church in Richmond, Virginia. Even as a young girl, I was somehow, albeit vaguely, drawn to spirituality. And even at that young age, the struggle began. I wanted to be at St. Stephen's, and I hated being there. The service was so unpleasant for me. I would derive relief in getting through it by slowly ripping off each entry in the church bulletin. Processional hymn, done. Rip, rip, rip. Doxology, done. Rip, rip, rip. Nicene Creed, done. Rip, rip, rip. I would have, at the end of each service, a pile of neatly ripped strips of paper that were the bulletin for that day's service. Today, looking back, I feel for my parents and those congregants close by enduring the endless ripping sounds. But then there would be the truly soaring hymn, or the truly inspiring sermon. And so it began, the being drawn toward spiritual growth and the desire to go running full tilt out of the sanctuary down Grove Avenue in Richmond. I felt trapped not only by the church, but by my conflict within of wanting to reach towards spiritual development and wanting to hightail away from it. The years passed. I got through school. I married. The extent of my spiritual practice had been a few yoga classes here and there. When my husband finished his studies, he said to me, "Ann, I need to go on a spiritual retreat to recover from grad school." I thought, that sounds really cool. And he found the retreat he wanted, a 7-day silent meditation retreat in the mountains of North Carolina at Southern Dharma. Having meditated half-heartedly, possibly 3 times before to that point, I said rather faintly, "Okay," and saw myself trying to do it, sitting with the others in the meditation hall, and then getting up quietly after about 10 minutes in and running screaming into the woods. Once again, hightailing it away from spiritual practice, feeling trapped, even imprisoned by that fledgling commitment of 7 days of silent meditation at Southern Dharma. So fast forward to 8 years ago, when my body was telling me I needed to stop a lifetime of dancing. No longer taking dance classes, I had 2 chunks of time in my week open for something new. The pull towards spiritual growth had never really gone away. I looked up meditation in Chapel Hill and found the Won Buddhist Center. I began to attend the Thursday morning study group and the Tuesday evening service. I absolutely loved it. But it came back, the specter of feeling trapped. When I noticed there were some who were deeply into their practice, good God, even coming daily to the 6:30 a.m. meditation service, gasp, I determined that I would dabble indefinitely, 1 foot in and 1 foot out. That was 8 years ago, and I'm still here. This talk is really a reflection of how my commitment to my spiritual growth has evolved. What has happened to that trapped, imprisoned feeling as I have continued to come back and come back. One of the first things I noticed about my meditation practice was an overly harsh response to my mind wandering. I honestly thought that if I'm supposed to keep my mind focused on the rising and falling of my lower belly when I breathe in and when I breathe out, then by damn it, it was not okay to stray into random thoughts. I was harsh with myself each time I realized I had drifted. It would sound in my head something like, aha, there you go again. You are not doing what you should be doing. What's the matter with you? And with a sense of inadequacy and failure, I would return to my breath. But it would take a while to calm myself down from such a painful feeling about myself. I've now realized that seeing this relationship with myself through my reaction to varying thoughts is indeed part of the journey of meditation as spiritual practice. I also realized that that very harshness with myself may have been part of the way I was imprisoning myself, my very own creation of the desire to go running, screaming through the woods. And so I kept coming back, and the way I hold my commitment to my spiritual growth has evolved. I've realized three things. First, I'm in the lineup of people who deserve compassion from me as well. Buddhism teaches compassion as a main tenet. Why do we leave ourselves out? It is at times a moment-to-moment challenge within to offer kindness instead of harshness. When I think I'm not really committed to my spiritual practice, unless I veer into aimless or worried thoughts less and less with each meditation, I remind myself, Ann, you are not checking enlightenment off your to-do list. It's part of the path to offer kindness to myself right here and right now. And when I pressure myself by thinking, well, I'm not really committed to my spiritual practice unless I go to each spring retreat Reverend Wangong offers at Southern Dharma, I say to myself, won't it be wonderful in just a few years when I'll be able to work fewer hours and then be able to go, not feeling stretched so thin. Secondly, I've realized it's okay to be like the tortoise who just doesn't quit, who keeps coming back over and over to putting the next foot forward. The founding master said, a foolish person tries to attain great wisdom that transcends the ordinary and surpasses the sages as soon as he or she has the first hint of awakening, like checking enlightenment off my to-do list. But this is a completely wrong idea, he continues. The water that fills the great ocean is the accumulation of small drops. The great soil of mountains and fields is the accumulation of small dust motes. The achievement of the great fruition of all the Buddhas and sages is the accumulation of wisdom in the formless and invisible mind. Those who aspire to great practice and who have initiated a great enterprise must start by accumulating wisdom in small matters. And so each time I return to my breath or return to my commitment in whatever form, I think it isn't sticking to focus on my breath. It isn't manifesting my commitment to my spiritual growth in a continuous, unbroken chain of wholesome and right actions. Perhaps that little bit of wisdom Master Sodhi-san was talking about is in my willingness each time I veer, each time I become discouraged, to return to my commitment, to take like the tortoise that next small step, even if I see how high the mountain is. Third, I realized this journey I'm on is an unfolding. In the sacred chant Songzhu, it says, awakening to this way of coming and going is an everlasting flower. Isn't that just beautiful? What I understood when I first started coming to the temple has changed into what I understand now. And what I understand now will change into what I understand 5 years from now. This unfolding of our spiritual growth is like a flower that never stops blooming. Recently, the Thursday morning study group was discussing a passage from the scripture which says, maintain no thought during each and every thought. Well, what the heck? What could that possibly mean? On the face of it, it is a contradiction in terms, but we pondered it. And I shared with the group that at this point in my life, I experienced significantly less dwelling, ruminating, angsting, chewing, worrying, that experience of one's mind chasing the rabbit of suffering way down into its hole. I wondered with the group if in that regard I have at least less thought in all thoughts. But really, I don't know what that passage means. And maybe it's okay that my understanding unfolds and evolves over time. In 5 years, that particular passage may mean something new and be even more meaningful to me. As I've reflected on these healthier ways of holding my commitment to my spiritual growth, I see a common element. It is intention. When I am meditating and veer off into thoughts, I return to my intention to come back to my breath. When I veer off into frustration with myself for veering off into my thoughts, I return to my intention to come back to kindness to myself. As a tortoise on my path, I return to my intention to take just the next step, and the one after that, and the one after that. And what fuels the everlasting flower of the unfolding of my spiritual practice is return to intention. If I'm not able to fully understand the scripture, no thought in all thoughts, it can be my intention that the deeper meaning of this passage become clearer to and increasingly relevant to me. So I put all these thoughts down on paper in preparation for this thought and found myself asking myself, how committed am I really? Letting myself be the tortoise, letting myself be kind and gentle to myself, and letting it all unfold. Am I currently not running screaming into the woods because I've basically made it more palatable, easier, cushier? Several weeks ago, Kathleen Herr gave a wonderful talk about steadfastness. In it, she used the phrase, your hair being on fire, to describe a passion for one's practice. I've thought and thought about that idea. Is my hair on fire? Am I truly committed? Is there a passion I have averted for fear of feeling trapped and hightailing it once again? Master Sotaesan recommended we develop certain aspects of our beings. He called these the 4 articles. They are belief, zeal, questioning, and dedication. In exploring the authenticity and depth of my commitment to my spiritual practice, I looked more closely at zeal. In the scripture it says, zeal means a mind that heroically moves forward, which is the motive force that encourages and pushes us along when we try to accomplish anything. I wondered, is commitment really commitment without zeal? Do I have zeal? My first answer was no. If I had zeal, I'd be setting aside more time for meditation, going to that 6:30 a.m. meditation service, and going to each spring retreat. But that voice sounded like old Miss Push and Miss Harshness. Slowly, I found something inside that is firm, unyielding, passionate in its way, my intention. It will stand up and fight for my spiritual growth like a knight in a joust. It doesn't mean I don't veer in all kinds of ways a lot of the time. It means I'll come back no matter what, to my breathing, to my kindness, and to my heartfelt desire to return to my true nature. And if I have that zeal of intention bringing me back to kindness to myself, to taking the next small plodding step into a gentle unfolding, maybe my tortoise does have some hair on fire, and maybe, just maybe, I can continue my journey without running screaming into the woods. Thank you.